reader, right? We talked about that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yep, okay. And James, you want to start and stop the recording?
I already did it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so everybody can see my screen now?
Yep. Well,
okay,
I can.
so should I hold on, or are we gonna? I'm sorry, I thought I heard like a doorbell or something.
Yeah, somebody probably jumped in.
Okay, all right. So my thesis proposal is a guide to mobile apps for nonprofit historic sites, and it's going to include a case study and a sample request for proposals. So for a little bit of background with it, in the region where I live, there are a lot of small, they call them cultural heritage nonprofits, these little historic sites that have limited staffing or no staffing. Maybe they only have people there a few times out of the year, but the sites are open and people show up and they basically don't know what to do there. Maybe there's a kiosk at the parking lot and that's all. So these little sites, they're struggling to attract people, they're struggling to get support, but they're not reaching people even when they come to the site. So they're missing opportunities to engage and connect with their visitors. So for my thesis topic, I want to look at how small cultural heritage organizations can, I'm sorry, are you seeing my people? I should hide that, there you go. Small cultural heritage organizations can leverage mobile technology to create better on-site experiences for visitors who actually come on site, and also to build ongoing relationships, because the key for these types of organizations is to get people to care about them, to become supporters, and hopefully to spread the word. So what's nice about mobile technology is that it allows you to combine things that you can't get in any other way. So it's not strictly an online experience where somebody could just sit at home and visit the website and they'd have everything. And it's more than just a physical visit where you don't have the help of having basically an app that will guide you around the space. So it allows you to combine this idea of being there with digital media. That way the visit will be more memorable and hopefully more engaging. So the idea for the web guide, which is basically a blog, a WordPress site, is that it's going to speak to site administrators and Friends Group board members, because some of these organizations, they're run by, solely nonprofit volunteers. So hopefully the board members would be able to benefit from basically some guidance on what an app can do for their site. So in researching mobile apps, especially as they relate to cultural heritage, I identified 4 themes: wayfinding, engagement, personalization, and relationship building. So in terms of wayfinding, it's different approaches to how you can guide people through a location. A lot of these places don't even have the ability to have people come inside, but they have these fantastic historic areas with ruins and spring houses and Revolutionary War grave sites and all these interesting things. How do you get people to find what's important? So wayfinding would look at a couple different approaches: the old-fashioned kinds of enter a cue or a code. If you've ever used one of those audio tours, you enter your stop number and you hear information. You can also have an interactive map. But the one that I probably focus on most is this idea of geolocation with augmented reality. Think Pokemon Go. You hold up your phone and you look at what's in front of you, and you're seeing basically the site with a layer from the camera, and then you know where to go because you see little pop-ups or markers where the points of interest are. The next theme would be engagement, and this is kind of a given. I think we've seen this all before. The idea of having something that has basically multimedia. How can you engage people, and when would you want to use it? When do you use audio? When would you use just an image? When would you use video, or what would be the best ways to use it? And also interactions. Could you invest in some polls, or could you build in little mini games to make things a little bit more interesting for people? There's also the theme of personalization, and a lot of personalization in terms of a guide focuses on visitor paths. The idea is, instead of offering just one way of getting through the site or through the different points of interest, can you give them different ways of deciding where they want to go? Kind of predefined paths, that would speak to certain interests or certain types of visitors. Also the idea of self-expression and social interactions where maybe they can contribute something, maybe they can post something that adds to the interpretation of the site, or interact with other people who maybe shared similar memories or had the same types of experiences at the location. And the last theme is relationship building. And the idea with this is that if you are going to invest all that money in an app, you want it to be something that extends beyond just use at the site itself. A given tends to be planning that you expect to have some facility to allow people to, plan when can they come and where do they park, things like that. And then during the visit, obviously you want it to be something that builds curiosity, that has people wanting to continue with their visit. And then of course after the visit, what can people take away with them? Can you offer them some kind of memento that they build as they go through your site? Ways to post easily to social media, and then also build in ways that you can follow up with them. As far as production goes, as I said, it's going to be a guide basically for site administrators as implemented in WordPress. So it's basically coming out as a blog. And then there will also be a case study and a sample RFP. So I am implementing it on WordPress. It's going to be organized by the identified themes. And for each feature, just to kind of organize things within the pages themselves, there's going to be a description of the feature and why you would want to use it. What is this going to do for the visitor experience? And I'm also including ideas for how the feature could be applied. So it's basically several different examples depending on their site of, how can this be used? Would you want to use video to show someone finding something at an archaeological dig that was done on your property? Would you want to use audio that's an interview of maybe someone who has childhood memories of what happened at, whatever happened at your site? Because it is going to include a case study, there's going to be a section that talks about, for this particular sample organization that we're considering, how would they actually use this? What would they want to do with the feature? And also, just because I have it from my research, I thought it would be helpful to include links to the supporting research. That way, if people decide, oh, I feel like I want to read more about that, or I think I want to refer to that if I'm doing a presentation for my board, they can actually have a little starting point. And this is just an example of the site as it stands so far. The theme itself might change. I'm not completely sold on it, but you can see along the top, you have the different themes, little section on tech notes, and this happens to be the opening page of it. And then just in terms of the case study and the request for proposal, the case study is going to be posted as just another page on the blog. And it's going to identify a sample site, what I would consider for the region where I live to be a quintessential historic site that is, low on budget with a lot of good layers of history there. And the idea with the case study is it's going to encourage the people who are using the site to think about applying it in the real world. So depending on their organization, maybe they can't necessarily apply every single concept or every feature, but the case study will give them an opportunity to think about it beyond their own site and see maybe how things could be used at other locations. And then the request for proposal, that's just like a nice practical springboard that they can use if they decide that they want to do some kind of app for their organization. They have a starting point. So for the case of the project, it's going to include the items listed here: an organizational overview, the goals, the target audience, and the specifications that make sense for the sample organization. But I found a really interesting site that has a lot of RFPs from a lot of different historic sites, real life historic sites. So I'm going to be sure to include that as well, so people can look at examples of these actual RFPs and see what Williamsburg, for example, is doing with their RFPs. So that is my project in a nutshell. Any questions?
Well, that was really good. Thank you very much. There's so many things I like about this. I like but from an IDT perspective, what I think is really interesting that you've done is you took a topic that you're interested in. Um, it already starts as an IDT topic, but then the delivery mechanism of building it out as a blog site of an informed or website resource, I think is just really nice. It's like the multi-layered part of that, I think that is really nicely done.
Thank you.
And so way back on your first slide,
Sure.
because I think it was your first slide, it might have been your second slide.
This one.
The next one. There. So I want to think about mobile technologies. And so is it really a mobile technology you're building, or is it an app? Is an app only mobile? So just focus in a little bit on that and talk about that just to start. I mean, just ponder in your mind. I mean, I think you're right. I think it is an app. And I think most of the time you use the apps on mobile devices, but I'm not sure I don't know. So let's just think about that a little bit. And then the second part, which I think is just fascinating, is your middle paragraph there. The merger of the physical experience of being there with the information experience of digital media. So tell me about how you envision this actually working. Are you thinking, I mean, tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. I think what I think is really interesting about it is that it gives you this experience that you can only have together, and it's especially effective if we talk specifically about augmented reality. So, in that case, I don't think it's only limited to augmented reality, but in something like that, like I think how interesting is that this one. I was just at a site a couple weeks ago, and I'm standing there, and forgive this little kind of tangent, but I'm looking at the ruins of a Revolutionary War hospital. And I'm thinking, how cool would it be to be able to pick up my smartphone, excuse me, point it at the ruins and see not the ruins, but now, basically a drawing of the hospital to scale where it would have been in the beginning. And that's an experience that you can only have from being there and using the technology at the same time. To me, there's like an element of like magic, especially to augmented reality. There's like a little magic kind of character to it that I think is really unique. It's not like it's different than just being on the website and bringing up a drawing of that hospital. It's really kind of creating a much more immersive type of experience.
Okay, that's what I thought you meant. I just wanted to make sure. You went through it so quickly, but I knew that there was that sort of excitement and passion back there. So I just wanted to hear a little bit of discussion there too. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. I see that Russ and Catherine joined us too. So Russ, we got started right at 7 because we have a full agenda. So I hope you guys caught most of it. But did you have any questions, or anybody else have questions for Danielle here? Or comments? I was talking, right?
You were talking. Okay, well, I guess that's it.
Yeah, no,
you were talking.
Yeah. So the other thing, also when you were talking, the next to the last slide, when you're talking about your production, I think it's the next to the last slide, or the
Sure.
Yeah. WordPress markets itself now as the world's largest website provider or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I think that they no longer call what you're building a blog exactly. Mm. They just think of themselves as websites. And I think that they don't. And so I'm not sure that the blog is necessary or helpful to your project. That whole word, you're not really making a blog in any traditional sense.
Right, that's true.
So
Thank you.
yeah, so I think it's just you're making a nice WordPress site, and that's a minor point, but I think then you don't even have to talk about what a blog is.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Um, yeah. And are you gonna? Have you found a bunch of examples where there's other sites that are creating these kinds of apps?
I have seen them, and I did actually. I was thinking about including them as well. Like if I basically another feature of different another, I shouldn't say it that way. Another section on a page that's talking about a feature could actually include basically those real life examples of, check out this site and see what they're doing.
I think
Check
that'd
out
be
this
real helpful,
organization.
yeah. Okay. I think that would be great if you have it. So yeah.
Sure.
So Catherine or Russ, are you guys set? Did you have any?
I'm sorry, I came in just a little bit too late to catch all the details, so I guess I'll look forward to reading it more about it in print.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry about that, Danielle. The times got me all messed up, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
What are the themes that you're going to be working on?
Sure. So the themes are, I'm just going to go back to the main list so we see them together. Because the idea with this is it's going to be basically an app or a mobile website that's going to be used on location at the site. The themes all play into the experience of being there. So the first one that's kind of the most significant for a mobile app that's supposed to be guiding you around a location is wayfinding. So basically, how do you get people at the location to find the different points of interest? So obviously the kind of the best of the breed, if you will, is the idea of using geolocation, and then you can have some kind of augmented reality where people can just hold their phone up and scan the horizon, so to speak, with the phone, and they can see markers as to where the points of interest are. But there are a couple different ways of doing wayfinding. The next one is engagement. So people get to a point of interest, and what is it that you're going to do for them there? They made it out, they walked all the way out to the spring house, and hopefully you're going to have something more to offer than just plain text. So how do you include audio? How do you include video? Maybe not necessarily how, but I guess more why, and what are some examples of ways that you can use high-res images or audio, video, other types of interactions to make it even more engaging. And then the next theme is personalization. So when someone's there, what ways are you giving them to choose a path that makes sense for them, to be able to build the experience in a way that has meaning for them. So maybe they have different expectations or different personal interests. Some people are history buffs and they love the Revolutionary War and they only care about that. So it's basically building visitor paths, through the site. And then the last one is relationship building, which is talking about, how do you build a relationship with these people who came on location, who maybe never even got to talk to you or your staff, maybe you weren't staffed that day. So basically coming up with ways of including in an app the ability to connect with people before the visit, to help them plan, during the visit, obviously through engagement and things like that, and also, after the visit, maybe giving them opportunities to easily post, interesting photos of themselves on Facebook that they can only get at your location, like photo ops or other types of social media, or even building little mementos that they can basically keep when they go. And these, of course, are digital mementos. So almost like maybe a scrapbook of their visit, but hopefully I can think of something that's a little bit more interesting than just a collection of the objects that you liked. But certainly there are a lot of sites that are doing just that.
Are you in New York City, Danielle? No.
No, I'm in southeastern Pennsylvania. I'm outside of Philadelphia.
Because there's Cooper Hewitt has a museum on 91st Street in Manhattan that you get a pen when you come in and you build your your own little sort of mini website based on what your interests are, and then you create things as you're going through too. So it's it's a regular museum in a sense, but you are creating things in terms of what you want to see. So that might be interesting if you.
And I think I shared that with you earlier this semester, right?
You did, yeah. I saw that. Thank you.
After Russ shared that with me, it's like, oh, that is fabulous. It's like, can you build this? That was great. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's this idea that you're in control to some extent of what you're doing. But the other thing that occurs to me, which I guess is out there, is this idea of game playing, so that you're going up levels and you're getting rewards as you move through. But I guess that sort of all depends on what your interests are. But that's what I think of when it comes to engagement is, sort of having a purpose when you arrive and working through that purpose. But it's that same idea as what's going on at Cooper Hewitt. But have you thought
that's really interesting. I think that would be a whole sort of different dimension or theme here to gamify.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you'd have to do a major game, but
right.
the idea of something moving you through. So what's your reward, as you move through this, and do you move up levels as you sort of explore? But that's just something it always interests me in terms of, when you think of 3D and you think of augmented reality, we often think of games, right? You're going through this world, and that's where, digital natives are coming from. They live in this world, and then they show up, and how can we get them interested in a museum or a cultural exhibit? So anyway, just something to throw out there.
Yeah, Danielle, if you wanted to add gamification, I mean, that would be an idea. I could see where it's late to add a whole nother dimension. But I think that's really interesting idea too, Russ. That, boy, I think I could just feel boards of directors' eyes rolling behind their heads, like, oh my God, my museum into a game, and we're going to give points. Like, oh no, we won't do it. So I was like,
something else that was kind of related, and I know what you mean, the idea of giving points, maybe some people would be unhappy with, but I could almost picture something where, especially these historic sites, they have old things that are found on the property, right? So you can imagine maybe if you visit all of the different points of interest, you get pieces of an object, and ultimately when you come in at the end, you have the object and it's put together, and you have a bit of discovery of, what was that object you were collecting? And I wonder if something like that would kind of help encourage people to make it to that next point.
And so a part of your audience has also become school-age kids.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, right.
So visitors, and so then you're, that's like a whole, it's pretty much the 12-year-olds and the 70-year-olds pretty much is the audience, I think.
Right.
Well, what it does is it does all of these things. It gives you a wayfinding. You've got to be able to find your way around. You've got to care, because you've got to find things. It's engaging. It personalizes the whole experience, and it builds relationships. But that's just one way of doing it. Anyway.
Yeah, there's another student will be presenting in the future, I hope, Josh Parkinson, who's working on games for college admissions for like student success stage. So for college students, clearly it's part of the college student experience to gamify their learning, and so it bleeds into the museum world as well. That's that would be a very interesting sell as a consultant. So yeah. But no, I think that's great. So Danielle, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And
thank you.
Especially for doing it on short notice. So that's good. And
thanks.
Yeah. Sean,